returned to Eden. Satan has repented. He says the last 5,000 years just seem like a terrible dream to him. He maintains that in the beginning he only intended to petition for some democratic reforms, but that when he was so shockingly hurled out of heaven, he reacted irrationally, with senseless plots and schemes which more and more began to horrify even himself, until finally it was too much. He realized he must just swallow his foolish pride and come clean and admit his error, if only to rid himself of self-disgust. Although he must in all honesty admit that he has some loftier hopes based on his reading of the parable of the prodigal son, who was allowed to rise again even though he had spent eons in nightly submissions to darkness. Naturally, the repentance was big news throughout the firmament. And when Eve got wind of it, she immediately rushed to Adam and announced they must apply for readmittance to Eden. Adam was uncertain, but Eve insisted that they must seek legal advice. They consulted with Clarence Darrow, who suggested a class action suit on behalf of all humanity, on the precedent of marriage annulment, when there had never been any marital consummation, since Satan's repentance had abolished sin and evil. A fortiori, damnation also must cease to exist, and thus Eden's gates must open wide to receive the retroactively purified sinners. If there ain't no sin, you must let us in. Of course, this question of retroactive purification was a debatable point, legal or metaphysical, but Darrow had confidence in his debating skills. The matter was ultimately tried before a court of the most exalted seraphim. Alexander Wedderburn argued the case on behalf of eternal damnation. Surprisingly, the Dramatists Guild, too, submitted an unsolicited amicus curiae brief in favor of damnation, claiming that the subject matter of their dramas would be stolen from them if evil were permitted to go out of existence. The court's decree contained a vast amount of obscure legal reasoning, but ultimately the decision must have been influenced by simple mercy and the consideration that it was prima facie absurd for punishment to persist on earth when divine harmony had returned to heaven. And so Adam and Eve and their myriad descendants were officially welcomed home to Eden by choirs and brass bands of angels, and the dramatists were advised they could go on writing their naturalistic dramas if they agreed to call them science fiction.